Okay, thank you very much. We will go ahead and call this special meeting of March 17th, 2022 to order. It's 5:04. First thing I want to say is just thank you all for making this special meeting happen today. I know everybody is juggling a lot of really busy schedules, and I really appreciate you taking this time. The first thing on our agenda is the public comments. We do have a couple of members of the public here. Before opening up to public comment, I would just like to give my usual spiel, which is to say the Norfolk Board of Education welcomes public comment. We love to hear from everyone. We ask that comments be limited to 5 minutes, and we want everyone to know that our policy is that we do not directly address public comment at the time that it's given, but that we certainly consider it and will always follow up on anything that comes up during that time. So to any members of the public, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand or put something in the chat.
Jenna has her hand up.
Okay.
Hi. Okay, hang on one second. I got to turn the video off so I can get to something. Thanks, guys. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was very saddened to hear about the 6th grade teacher position being eliminated in the proposed budget for next school year. I have never met a teacher as caring as Mrs. A. She totally gets my son, and not a lot of teachers get him. It's really been amazing for him to have a teacher who understands him and sees when he is struggling and does whatever needs to be done so he can succeed. We have all known about the transition to multi-age at Botel for a little while now, and I just feel like Botel is not moving towards this multi-age setting because of how good people say it is. I feel that it's being done only to accommodate the shrinking enrollment numbers and nothing more. I still wonder about multi-age and how it will benefit in the long term. My oldest has always needed a lot of extra help in his academics and is taken out of class often to work on those things. So I feel because of that, I don't really know if he has benefited or not from a multi-age setting. And my 2 youngest are just starting, and I haven't really gotten a good feel of that because of how young they are. Time will tell, I guess. Are multi-age classrooms still expected to take state standardized tests which don't go by the multi-age curriculum? What if this teacher position does end up getting eliminated, and then a couple years down the road, they end up needing a full-time one again for some reason? How easily will you be able to make that happen? Is there such a thing as seniority with teachers? I don't know if that means anything in the teacher world, but that's huge in my line of work. Have all of the other positions in the school been thoroughly looked at to see if there could be cuts made anywhere else? Instead of chopping from the bottom, can we chop from the top? Do I have any idea what I'm talking about? Maybe, maybe not, but I just wouldn't feel right if I didn't say anything at all because of how awesome Mrs. A is. It would be such an incredible loss to lose at Botel, to lose such an amazing teacher. And I really, truly hope that the board and the school administration understand what they'd be losing if this was to stick. And I just really hope it doesn't. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenna. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a comment? Okay. Okay, so then we'll move on. So the impetus for this meeting, this special meeting, was to allow us all some additional time to reflect and to do some information gathering in light of the letter that Chris Snyder addressed to the board in public comment in our last meeting. Some issues were raised in that letter. The board is considering them, and we will always consider any issues that kind of fall within our purview when they're brought up. To that end, I asked our administrators to prepare some information in response to some questions and to provide it to the Board of Ed members to review. I know that you guys have all received that information now, and I know that you've taken some time to review it. It's a lot of information, so I don't want to recount it word by word, but I figured for the members of the public who are here, I would review the questions and then do my best to summarize the answers. This is the flip through the papers period of my desk presentation. Okay. So the first question was asked for some information, some details about how teacher feedback is listed and how that feedback is handled, both in general and in relation to multi-age programming. And the response given talked about faculty councils that meet monthly to give all faculty members a venue to voice concerns. The PDAC committee, that's the Professional Development and Evaluation Committee, which also meets monthly. And its purpose is to engage teachers in strategic planning, professional development, and the teacher evaluation model. There's an
Can Donna be let in?
I don't see her in the waiting room,
Okay.
so I don't know if she's in the correct link.
She just sent an email saying she's trying to get into the meeting, but she didn't elaborate.
Okay.
I wonder if she
Right.
doesn't have the passcode. The passcode is the address, I mean, the phone number for the school, 542-5286. Ginger's our meeting host, so she should just, I know Ginger's going to keep an eye on it, but
Yeah,
if you let
I'm-
Donna know to
I'm
keep
waiting
trying,
to
that
see
Ginger
her.
will.
Okay. Maybe I can text her something.
Okay, so to continue on with that, there's the SRBI team that meets 3 times a year, and they meet with each classroom, that little team meets with each classroom teacher. There's monthly faculty meetings. Then there's teacher meetings with the principal at the beginning of the year to set goals, and then conferences mid and end of year to review progress and make revisions. We also know that there was an anonymous survey given to the staff in just this past January, and that yearly staff surveys are given. Next question was, I asked to them to provide a timeline of the multi-age rollout and to briefly review the rationale for decisions along the way. There's quite a bit here, but I'm just going to try to skim over it since you guys have already heard all of it. In 2015-16, the superintendent investigated these instructional models to help mitigate social emotional concerns with our very small or increasingly small and homogeneous cohorts. 16-17, that information on the multi-age model was shared. I remember we met with Sandra Stone, and there were presentations about that to the teachers, the parents, and the board. The first year, the pilot year for actually having it at Botel was 2017-18. And in that year, there were 2 sections of primary, which is K1. Then that was adjusted in 18-19 based on feedback to have 1 early primary class and 2 primary classes. In year 3, we had 1 early primary class and 1 primary class and 2 intermediate classes. That was 2019-20. 2021, there was a pause in the plan as we were dealing with COVID. The multi-age classes were kept through intermediates, but they were pushed off for 5-6. And this year, 21-22, the multi-age classes were kept through intermediate, and a hybrid model was implemented in 5-6, whereby the ELA, the English language content, is multi-age. Math is being taught by math specialists. That was added, I believe, in 2020 in response to feedback on how the math curriculum fit with our multi-age model. Yeah, so we're in the hybrid model now in 2022. The next question asks to ask for some information about the current state of affairs in Warren, Warren's multi-age program. And we found that in 2020, there was a new principal was hired. She came in fresh with COVID and found that she was concerned about the mixing of classes with COVID and her newly coming to the model. So she pulled back into individual classes, but now is planning a quasi multi-age schedule that integrates students for specials and non-core academics, which are identified as science and social studies. That actually made me chuckle a little bit. Non-core academics is science and social studies. I don't feel like my science teacher husband would like that. And the next question was asking about achievement data before and since the multi-age model has been adopted. So we were given some information about that. That is complicated, but it was really very interesting. I really liked that presentation of the data. That's one that I haven't seen before, that particular way, where it's banded out by graduating class. That was very interesting to see. Since there are so few children in our classes, it's often very difficult to evaluate those sorts of comparisons. You know, so much changes with just one student. I think it's something like 10 to 17% or something of like one student can represent like a huge amount of difference in those pieces. So with that kind of brief review of that document, I wanted to see if there were any questions from the board members that they wanted to pose.
Can I just clarify that the reason that a multi-age model was originally proposed was in order to solve the issue of a small class size?
Yeah, so yes, when we first started talking about, my recollection of the board conversations back then, where we were talking about how to manage kids having very small classes and kind of being on each other's nerves, like how to manage the social issues of kids who spend all their time together, and by the time they're aging through, they're on each other's nerves and have those sorts of troubles. So at that time, that's what I recall being like a very big focus of the board. It was a very big concern of parents at the time, that there were, you know, issues with kids getting along, and with feeling supported and feeling happy and safe and those sorts of things at school.
And then as a follow-up to that, were there any other models or solutions that were investigated and discarded, I guess? Or?
Yeah, well, so throughout my time on the board, I can only really tell you my recollection, and without documentation or anything like that. But my recollection is we have spent a lot of time on my time at the board, like thinking about how to live in our little world. You know, we have like one thing that has been brought up consistently in my time on the board is that teachers don't have another teacher to collaborate with. So that's something that we've talked about a lot, and talked about collaborating with other schools. We've talked about the small class sizes being an issue when you don't have two classes you can separate kids into. That's one problem for kids. It's also a problem with teachers, that, you know, if you have a teacher student issue, that can be difficult to manage with our small population. So we've talked about like social emotional ways to handle those things, and talked about those different programs. We have talked about collaborating with other schools, specifically in terms of our small size and budget issues. I mean, I know you know this, Amy, but the other major research has been into consolidating schools, regionalization and consolidation. There's also been, we've done studies in terms of like tuition. Do we want to have people come with tuition? Marketing, like how successful has Cornwall been at marketing their school? That's been something that we've looked in before, trying to get more people in. Let's see, am I missing anything? We talked about, I don't know that we investigated this super far as I can remember, but there has been talk about voucher systems and how voucher systems work in other towns, where when you don't have a school, that you're given a voucher to choose where you want to go. We never really went very far with that, honestly, because usually at the board level, people have found that to be like, nobody wants that. Like, you know, they want to think of that as the absolute last ditch thing. So we've never really investigated that too far, to be honest. It's been more sort of like, oh, I heard so-and-so does this and that kind of thing. I don't think I'm missing anything, but Donna, do you have any other pieces you can share for that you recall? Because we have so many new board members. It's true. A lot of you don't have the that length of history.
What's the question?
What have we done to look at ways to manage small class sizes and high cost per pupil? Maybe Amy didn't put that part in, but I think of that as
Oh
part of it.
man, we've been working on this for 20 years. That's what can I tell you? You pretty much covered it. I mean, with this, the collaborations with Colebrook or other schools, bringing kids in on tuition. I just, small classes are nice, but they're not really the be all end all. You really need more kids and you need more support for the teachers to be able to talk to each other and bounce ideas off of each other. And, the smaller we get, what's there going to be like 5 teachers next year? Right?
Yeah. So, what we've sort of moved to, our model has been going towards, we have fewer classroom teachers, more specialized teachers. Like we now have our math resource teacher and we have the reading resource teacher. I guess we've always had a special ed teacher as far as I can remember. But we have sort of these kind of specialized folks.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, so does anyone else have any questions that they wanted to review or any things they wanted to mention? This is, these sorts of questions are long-term questions, and we certainly don't have to solve any of these things, or we never have an exhaustive discussion about it tonight, regardless. I just wanted to make sure that there was nothing really on the top of your mind that you wanted to discuss from those pieces before I move on to talking about the budget.
I just have a question. So it's to my understanding, in the budget over the years, there has been staff education in regards to the multi-age system and the integration. So in the past, they were almost educated to prepare for this model, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. And if so, if the teachers had thoughts or concerns about it, was it ever mentioned throughout the last few years before it was actually implemented? If, the multi-age system with a few teachers and more special teachers, quote unquote, has it been chaotic, or if it's been working or hasn't worked, and has that ever been physically addressed?
So if I am understanding, the question is, has PD specifically been given to multi-age instruction? That's one question. Another one would be, have concerns been brought up and how have they been addressed, right?
Right.
Okay. So I think for the concerns, have concerns been brought up and have they been addressed? I found, and I can let Lauren and Mary Beth refer to this too, but in the packet there, it seemed as though they talked about reactions, adjustments made to the multi-age rollout in response to reactions. So for instance, math was not working out, that the model didn't work, didn't support that multi-age blend in the same way, or that individualized path in the same way. So that was teased out, for instance, or the 1-2 or K1 breakdown was not the best choice. Rather, they felt that pre-K, K, and 1-2 was a better way to organize that time period. Those are things I know that they mentioned in the packet, but maybe Mary Beth or Lauren, would you like to give us just a little bit about that? Just for the, just to give us a little more information.
So certainly feedback has been solicited every year along the way, and those adjustments have been made. When teachers have brought concerns to us, like teachers came and said, We've done the K1 for the year. We really don't think that's the best. We want to consider doing pre-K and 1, 2. And we agreed that that made a lot of sense, and we made that adjustment. As you mentioned, when they came to us and said, math is just too challenging. The standards don't follow the same kind of a progression that they do in all of the other subjects. We said, okay, we found a way to break math out so that each grade level would have a teacher teaching that grade level specific content. We knew that moving forward, we wouldn't be able to do that without another person. And so we were also in the midst of implementing a new, not only school-wide, but region-wide math program. So we advocated for a math specialist who could come on board, support teachers with math, and also pick up those classes so that during math, every single grade level could have a teacher to teach specific to math. So every step along the way, when we have had teachers come to us with concerns or issues, we've worked with them and made those adjustments. When we knew they needed, we always knew they needed more time. It's a much more time consuming and difficult model to implement, without a doubt. And you may recall, Ann and Donna, that at the beginning, when this started, there were no half days in the calendar at all. So Lauren and I petitioned the board to add half days throughout the year to give teachers that time to kind of regroup and plan. And then this year, again, based on teacher input and issues around behavior, Lauren came to me, I came to the board, and the board has put in 3 additional days. So, could we use more time for planning and collaborating? Absolutely. We've given as much time as we can. We continue to look for more opportunities for time. And then recently, as the last couple of years, as you mentioned, again, we paused the progression to upper intermediate when those teachers came and said, it's COVID, we really, are dealing with so much, we don't feel like we can take on one more thing. So we used that year as, we did pause then, but we were committed to having the multi-age model in place when the cohort that has gone through from the beginning got to that point. And so last year we agreed on a compromise where, again, there would be some switching of classes, but the English language arts piece would be the integrated age groups. And that for sure this year, when the cohort came up to upper intermediate, they would have the multi-age model to grow into. So again, I don't know of any other times or incidents where teachers have come either to Lauren or to me with issues that, weren't addressed, and we've made the modifications and adjustments along the way, including providing more planning time and more resource teachers to plan with them to help them through this very difficult, challenging task.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that information. And for providing that background. As I said, we'll continue to consider these issues as they are important always. Supporting our teachers is #1 priority. And I know at least it's always been I want to give the teachers any resources they need in order to be successful. Having teachers who feel supported and have enough resources to make things work is fundamental to having a successful school. So that's definitely a goal. Okay. Well, so
Sorry to take up more time. I had 2 other questions that relate to the multi-age model and how it's rolled out and going forward. One being, I hear all of the feedback from teachers and staff as they roll it out, and the accommodations and the really taking the teachers at their word for what they need in order to roll out the model best for students. Are there other indicators that Botel is using to evaluate the effectiveness of the multi-age model other than teacher feedback and the research that we got that was very interesting to read? Are we using any other benchmarks to gauge whether or not this is the best model for students.
So Lauren, did you want to respond to that, or would you like me to take that question?
You certainly can start if you'd like to, and I can add on.
Okay, so, we have not had, because with the multi-age starting in the younger ages, and then with the pause in summative assessment, we have not had any kind of longitudinal summative data, but we have followed benchmark data, and we have been trying to tease out a couple factors, one being, the growing mobility of our students. So we're trying to see the kids that have just gone through the multi-age that have been with us, how are they progressing, according to benchmark data that we do have. And again, Lauren can correct me, but there is nothing to suggest that our kids are not growing at least the rate they were growing when they were in the traditional model. Is that correct, Lauren?
Yes, I believe that to be true. When we look at and I prepared that kind of, cohort chart with the traditional model, achievement data versus the, multi-age model. And as you could see, there's far fewer academic indicators for the multi-age model, simply because of how we rolled it out, like Mary Beth said. But when we look really closely at the data, there really is no data to suggest that our students are performing, their performance has decreased. And in the fall, I'm proud to say, due to our teachers' very, very hard work, even in the middle of a pandemic, using a new mathematic resource, our students grew, and that was not seen, I don't think, in many districts statewide. So, I'm very proud of our teachers' hard work, as I know you are. And, I think it's, we're seeing the benefit for our kids academically. But I also wanted to speak to, the social emotional indicators that we look at Botel. And, like we do parent surveys at the end of the year and staff surveys at the end of the year, we've been giving, students an opportunity to share how they're feeling about school and being in school. So those are indicators that we look at, Amy. And then from there, I know you know this as an educator, we'll identify goals that we want to, set and achieve to support our students with their social emotional functioning. So we use a lot of surveys. We do walkthroughs throughout the year to gather information about how our students are performing. So we have a lot of different methods that we use to not only look at how our students are learning and growing, but how they're feeling at school. And we're constantly analyzing that data to make sure that school is a safe, positive place where kids can learn and grow at high levels.
And along the social emotional piece, the literature and the research would bear out what we see anecdotally. School is a social activity, and it's very difficult when you have really small, tiny classes that become a cohort that travel together with the same small social group from pre-K through grade 6. If we were in the traditional model this year, we would have 4 cohorts of students that were 6 or under, and next year we would have 5 cohorts of classes of 4, 5, and 6 going through. We've had teacher feedback that say, how would you have a meaningful PE activity with 4 kids or 5 kids? Many of our academic areas and much of what is tested on the summative test are kids' ability to collaborate and to share and to get multiple perspectives. If you have class sizes of 4, 5, 6, even 8, it's very difficult to implement a program like that. So from the get-go, you know, if you don't plan for the future, you don't have a future. And the writing was on the wall that enrollment was going to continue to shrink. To have a viable school where kids had social interactions with more than 4 or 5 kids for the 7, 8 years that they were at Botel, the multi-age was certainly a model that would help us to mitigate that to the extent that we can. And even at that, next year, if we reduce the teacher that is reduced in the budget, our class sizes will be 10, 14, 18, and 20. So, you know, those are at least reasonable class sizes to have student conversation and peer interaction, much more opportunity for students to have somebody like them to have a relationship with. While there is a bigger range in terms of academics, we've seen over again in teacher feedback supports that we've had students in the multi-age classes where there's a younger student who is really provocative and bright and ready to do higher work. They can find more chance of, there's more chance of the finding an academic peer with one of the olders. And conversely, we have olders in the group who struggle and are working at a lower level on the standard. There's much more likely to be a chance of there being a younger that they can have as a partner working at the same level, as opposed to kids being really isolated further in an already very small cohort. So the social emotional piece has to be really given the attention that it deserves. And certainly in terms of academics, we continue to watch our growth rate, meeting our targets. We have been right on. So I have not seen or any evidence or heard anything to suggest that multi-age is not doing at least what kids were able to do academically, as I said, prior to having the traditional model. And many indicators, albeit mostly anecdotal and social emotional, that it is better for kids.
Thank you for taking the time for this during the special meeting just to catch me up to speed on everything. And my last question was, given the revert back to the traditional model for the math and then the gains that we've seen in math, I know that there were 2 changes. One, the math specialist and the curriculum, and then using the traditional graded model. I'm just trying to make sense of the fact that the multi-age model is better for students and their academics, but we're seeing growth in the math, which is the traditional graded model. And I'm assuming that means the smaller groups of students by grade. And so I don't know, I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. And if this isn't the right meeting for me to understand that, I understand. I don't want to take up too much time, but that's still a question that I'm left with.
You know what? I would really like to talk about that math piece again, but I think actually maybe that would be a better topic for another time. I remember when that first came up and I was like, what are you talking about? What are we doing? And they had to explain to me in very simple terms about how math builds and needs a different kind of model. So maybe I think I'd like to ask Lauren to present that to us in the future. If you could talk to us about math and why it is a different, why a different model was chosen. If you could review that for us, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
If I could just make 2 quick comments.
Sure.
So about that, I mean, I think that the implementing the single age math shows like some adaptation and responsiveness within a model that I think, frankly, for me is a good model. And then it shows the ability to evolve based on feedback and student needs within that model. So I think that's important. The other thing that I think that is important is that one of the biggest critiques, I think, of the multi-age model is the most advanced students don't quite get what they need. And I would push back against that. Like, I think that those students, we all hear that to learn is to be able to teach, or if you can teach something, it means that you know it. And so I think that those folks assisting their younger peers, it's the top of Bloom's taxonomy, create, analyze, and evaluate. So I think it provides a really rich opportunity for even the most advanced students. You know, on the surface, we think advanced students are in a classroom with folks below them, but I think that there's a lot of social and, you know, constructivist arguments that that's a positive thing.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. Well, so with that information in hand and you know, with the promise to continue those conversations with our board as we always do, we're tasked tonight with finalizing our budget. So it's my understanding that the finance subcommittee is recommending the budget as proposed, but Botel is a small school, you know, and we are really more closely defined as a family, I think, than as public servants, you know, and the decision to remove a teacher, it's a really serious one. And I certainly don't take it lightly, and I know that no one out here on the board does. I want to make sure that we, you know, fully support this discussion and that everybody gets a chance to think about that and to go over what the possibilities are. We did receive some numbers about what the budget, what the student population, what the class sizes would look like if we were to retain the 2 teachers in our upper intermediate class. Did everybody receive that? And didn't receive that?
Yes,
You didn't
I
get
did
that,
receive
Ginger?
No, I didn't. Where
It was
that?
8:34 a.m. Is that right? Let me see.
No, I didn't get an email today.
I'll
That
send it to
didn't
you.
have class size, and that just had the impact on the budget if the teacher, if that additional teacher position was put back in the budget. Those were the numbers that you received today. I do have the numbers for, you know, class size right here if you need that reviewed.
Sorry about that. I thought that it was on that same sheet. Get my sheets confused. School year document. Well, why don't I forward that to you? Just so you can see it.
Thank you.
It should have been sent to,
I just forwarded it to her.
oh, thank you. Okay.
Hold on a second.
I think it does have it says early primaries 11, primaries 14, intermediate
Oh,
18,
okay.
intermediate 20.
Oh, okay.
So did everyone see, well, as soon as Ginger gets that, I'll go
yeah.
over it real quick, Ginger, just so you know. So if we were to retain 2 sections of upper intermediate, they'd basically have 10 students each, as I understand it, or you know, that's provided there's no changes in who comes and who goes. Salary line from, let's see, what is that? Line 8, I believe.
Yes.
That would, instead of showing a decrease of 55,926, have an increase of 11,252. The benefit line would go from 25,000 increase or to 16,000 increase. In the final word there is that we'd essentially have a net increase from last year if everything was kept the same, but we kept those 2 positions in place, 2 sections in place for 5-6. We'd have a net increase of 3.74% to our budget. So does anyone want to discuss this, talk about our pros and cons, talk about the decision to be made?
I'd just like to say something really quick. As you said before, it's not an easy decision to come by for losing great teachers that we have. I think maybe Mary Beth mentioned it before. If you look at staff development days in our calendar and half days and the education provided to integrate the system, it's a lot to consider. So regardless of the outcome, I just would like to put it out there that even though I'm not 100% with the integrated system, maybe because I don't fully understand it yet, I see the benefits and the cons, but I think it's important to know that it's not an easy decision to make. Losing a good teacher in such a small community is not beneficial to our students. But when you look at the budget and the calendar year and things that were given and provided, it is a lot to consider and not easy.
I mean, I would certainly say that there's value to every relationship that you build. And I'm not kidding when I say that I think of Botel as a family, and that any change to that family is a painful one and a difficult one. I also think, though, it's important to think about, like, everyone's sort of academic success and what's best for the student's future. I mean, and for the school's future. And I think that if we have to make decisions that are based on kind of that pull out the personalities from the pieces. Otherwise, it's just too difficult, I think. And so I that's tough to do, but I know it's something I struggle with. John, is there something you were going to say?
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough decision, and yes, yeah, and it's magnified by the small size of our community. But we have to make decisions that are in the best interest of the students. And this has brought up the just bringing these questions up. I think was a good and worthy thing, because it made us take another look at the way we're doing things, because we don't want to become complacent. Some of the issues which were brought up, which we've considered, that are sort of tangential to the question of the number of teachers we're going to have, were worth bringing up, and we'll be discussing them further. But I think it's important to know that anybody who has a concern should raise it. We will address those concerns as we can. All of the information that we got about the multi-age classrooms indicated that it is at least as good as the traditional model, if not better, but it succeeds best when there's complete buy-in by the students, by the parents, and the teachers and the administration, and that the teachers get the support that they need to prepare, to create the curriculum, to plan their teaching according to a method that they weren't necessarily taught, but they're adapting to. And all of our teachers need to know that they have our complete, the board's complete support, in as much as we can provide support, and they have the support of our administration, Mary Beth and Lauren.
I agree. I think that is absolutely important. I mean, we want to provide the resources that are needed, and so within whatever reasonable way we can. And I hope that's been clear in the decisions we've made. So okay. Well, so if there's anyone else who wants to, have something you want to say, Ginger?
Yeah, I had my hand up.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I know you
The
probably
classroom management is not my forte.
Yeah, I use gallery view instead of speaker view, so it makes a difference when you're looking at participants. I know we've taken time to think about this, and I appreciate the getting the Word document with that. And just to piggyback what John was saying about buy-in and morale, and I know, last year we also went down a teacher, right? So we went from 6 to 5, and then we're going to 4. And it's a big changes in a small period of time. But I know that we talk about, well, Colebrook has this or other schools have that, and Colebrook doesn't have the supports of having a math person and a ELA or reading person to support their classroom teaching. So I think we do have that support in place, and I hope it's working well. My concern is having the teacher buy-in and them feeling that they can be successful with the students and give them what they need. And I know that Lauren and Mary Beth do their best when faced with challenges to address them. And yeah, they, at some point it's like it happens on the fly, but it really should happen on the fly. When something's not working, you want to use that feedback and make changes. Sometimes the changes are successful and sometimes they're not. It's all a learning process. We're all learning along the way. So I would like to, I know this kind of goes back to the previous with the surveys that we saw and stuff. I just would like to see more, find out more about the morale and the buy-in from the staff and faculty and see what we can do to improve that. Because if it continues to go down, then the teaching and learning process suffers, and then the students will also suffer. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. Jay, I see you have your hand up.
Good job, Ann. So one of the questions that I have, and I think our public commenter Jenna brought it up. Historically, if we were to drop a faculty line, how difficult is it to regain that line when we go to the powers that be and say, how do we get another line? Because I know at the college, if I were to give up a line, I will never see that line again. So
Well,
say
yeah.
boom in enrollment or whatever. That's just a question, sort of a question that I have.
I would say in my time at the board, it has been exceedingly difficult to raise the budget at all. We're typically kept at 0 or less. And any adjustments have to be made with like juggling what's in the lines. And those lines are difficult to juggle because they are very tightly filled. There are a lot of constraints to those line items. They grow based on contracts and inflation and things we don't control. So it is difficult to add money back into the budget. That said, I will say that the Board of Finance, when we have gone for very specific things and said this is something we really need, they are open to hearing that and to making adjustments. So I'd say it's difficult to add to the bottom line, but it's not impossible if there's something that comes up for it to be covered. We have added $100,000 for special ed at the last moment, those sorts of things. And so if something is demonstrated to be a need or a change that is caused, then the Board of Finance has come through. Amy,
it's a problem it's a problem that I wish we had to ask to increase our budget, because our budget has stayed pretty flat.
Always.
Which is actually a decrease because of the cost of living for many years now, when the regional budget keeps going up 2, 3, 6% every year.
Amy, I think I saw your hand icon.
I just noticed that there's an increase of spending in the curriculum line item, and I know that there were contractual obligations to support some of that, but noting that we're spending less money on personnel and more money on curriculum just makes me wonder what's the most effective way to support students in their learning? Is it should we be spending the money on the things, or is from my understanding that the teacher relationship, the teacher component of the equation is one of the most impactful parts of the equation in terms of student gains and student learning. And so just noting in our budget this year that we are, not supporting with our money the teacher positions, but rather the curriculum and that development piece. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm coming very late to this process, and
So the
two
increase
cents.
in that line, just to give you a little more background, is about writing custom curriculum that will fit the school. So it's like a one-time investment. It won't be a continued like personnel bump or something like that. Just to give it some context. Not that in no way negates your point, that it's not. I hear what you're saying.
It's also required by new legislation that we're following, the right to read. Act. So that is based on the number of hours that we estimate that the person that at Advance will be providing to write that curriculum will cost. And yes, it is a 1 year cost that might be less next year, but then that cost will go down to 0.
And one other benefit of it, Amy, is that this is one of the things that the teachers have been saying they need. They need more time for planning and for adjusting curriculum to multi-age. And this investment with support from EdAdvance will provide them with many more tangible things that they have been asking for. And so that money, it will respond to the legislation, but it will also support every single teacher in the school, because they will all be part of the process and benefit from the development of rich reading units that will be customized to the multi-age model, as opposed to purchasing something that the state recommends that's one size out of the box developed for specific grade level traditional models.
Okay, were there any other points of discussion? Okay, well, I think it may be time to call for our budget vote. Barring no motions to make adjustments to the budget, I think we'd be.
Yeah, so there was the one, but there was the one change that was made from the budget that we looked at the regular March meeting. So we had looked at the 16 February draft, and we have gotten the new version dated March 1st. And the one change that was made between those two budgets was the on page 5, dropping the increase to the superintendent's salary to 0 and putting that money into an increase in the anticipated rates for the health and dental insurance. But the bottom line remains the same. So again, acknowledging that this is not an easy decision, but we have taken into account the issues that were raised. We've been doing a lot of discussing and thinking and reading. So it's not like we're just pushing this through without considering it. That said, I move that we approve the March 1st, 2022 draft of the 2022-2023 school year budget for Votel as presented.
Okay, a motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, a motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand to say aye.
Aye.
All those against? Amy, would you like to abstain?
Yeah, I'm sitting with this information for 2 weeks now, so I feel like I'm going to abstain on this vote.
That is fair. Okay, with that, the motion carries. I know that we have been given a date to present the budget to the Board of Finance. John, I hope that you will again do the honors of making your excellent presentation to the board, and please let me know, particularly if there's something they can do to support you in that. Okay. Okay, well that ends the regular business of this meeting. I just want to say one more time that really is with a heavy heart that these decisions are made. It is never, there are so many difficult decisions to be made in every budget. And there's really just not any other words than that. That's the truth of things. But I do thank you, all of you board members, for putting your heart and soul into this. I know that these aren't easy conversations, and I know that you have put a lot of time into thinking about it and into making the decisions that you think are best. And I do appreciate that. So thank you very much.
And thank you to all the teachers, all the staff, and everybody who's, one of the issues that was brought up was how difficult it has been the past couple of years with COVID. And thank you to all of you for stepping up.
Boy, that's for sure. There's no lack of thank yous. You know, one other thing I want to mention is I really do appreciate public comments and in feedback. There's really no way to improve or way for us to find the best path forward in a vacuum. We need to hear from people. We need to talk to each other, and we need to have kind of the openness of mind and heart to hear those things. So I appreciate everyone for sharing those things and for taking those risks, because I appreciate what that means. So this would be a good time to call for a motion for adjournment.
Jen, I think Jen's hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ginger. Go ahead.
That's okay.
I guess I only don't notice your hand. I don't know what that is.
Maybe because I'm the host, so like it doesn't pop up. I don't know.
I think it's the light on the.
Maybe.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, my I just wanted to say thank you for the board and everyone for supporting this special meeting and giving us time to address these issues, come back and have a little bit more context before we approve the budget to go to the Board of Finance and make it into the board's budget, because before it was Mary Beth's, now it's ours, and now we can present it. And I know this is more time for everyone, but I just want to say I appreciate it, everyone coming back and giving this time, because we're volunteers here and we take our time and we've all looked through our packets and we have good questions. So I will be quiet and lower my hand now. Thank you. And I'll call to adjourn the special meeting of March 17th, 2022, so we can go have our St. Patrick's Day dinner at 6 o'clock.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and double seconded. All those in favor, you say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion adjourned. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Yeah,
Happy
thank
St.
you.
Patrick's Day.